This is the OFN Today on the Our Football Network as we talk Atlanta Falcons football with Kevin Knight, editor and writer for Falcoholic.com. Kevin, thanks for joining us again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me back.
And unfortunately, we don't have you on because the Falcons have gotten off to a 5-0 start and things are going fantastic, and we have to find out why. It's the exact opposite. Hey, man, I'm a Jet fan, so combined we're 10?
Yes.
So things aren't going well for either one of us. I think the only reason Gase is still the head coach because he hasn't had the tenure that Quinn has had. But Quinn almost got fired last year. We talked about that, obviously, several times, including, of course, leading up to the start of the season. And it just, I guess, was too much. So what was the specific – was there a specific thing that happened with Quinns Coaching that didn't work for this specific group of players?
I don't know if you can point to like a specific thing with Quinn. To me, and let me preface it by saying like Quinn was always super nice. He was just a great dude. Every time I talked to him, every time our other reporters talked to him, great guy. So it was always painful to see him struggling
Sure.
From a personal standpoint. But honestly, Quinn is not a great football coach in that I don't think he has a very strong understanding of X's and O's of.
You mean as a head?
Scheme.
Oh, really? Overall, you mean not just as a head coach?
Yeah, I mean, I when he was made the defensive coordinator last year, the defense was so bad at the bye that he had to relinquish the duties to other assistants.
Okay.
And maybe part of that is just that the stress of being a head coach has kind of weighed on him and that's affected things. I do think Quinn is very good at several things. He's a very good talent evaluator. When he came to Atlanta, Dimitrov's drafting improved markedly. I think he has a really good idea of players' strengths and weaknesses and how to evaluate them and how to get guys that fit what he wants to do. I think he's a tremendous motivator and leader. I mean, the players were still clamoring for him to stay, even when the team was 0-5. That tells you a lot about how much they like him and respect him. It also tells you a lot about why players aren't the ones consulted when making head coaching hires and decisions. But he does a lot of things well, but I think on the whole, he's not a coach that provides a game day advantage to your team.
Okay, fair enough.
And defensively, he runs the Seattle scheme, and the Seattle scheme is very simple. It's very easy. It's also extremely personnel reliant, and when the Falcons personnel wasn't getting the job done, aka every year that wasn't 2016 and 2017, they were unable to make any sort of adjustments. They were unable to change anything, and the defense was a disaster. And this is a team that, because they have so much cap tied up in the offense, is always going to be a team that's going to win with that offense and need to rely on a defensive coach that can get more out of the talent they have. And Quinn is not that guy. He has consistently shown that he's probably getting less than what the talent is on this defense. He's also shown that he doesn't really have a good feel for hiring coordinators or deciding when to move on.
On offense.
I don't know that Dirk Cutter was his decision. I believe
that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he had input, but
I thought they were buddies.
I don't know how long he actually knew him before, because I don't believe he ever coached with Dirk Cutter before these years. Who did coach with Dirk Cutter was, Thomas Dimitrov and team president Rich McKay. I believe they were the ones responsible for the Dirk Cutter hire.
Interesting.
We heard from one of our athletic beat writers, Jeff Schultz, that the Falcons, a lot of fans in 2019, after they fired Steve Sarkisian, which was obviously a mistake, fans wanted them to go after Gary Kubiak, who was currently with the Broncos. And apparently, at the time, the Broncos were saying they were going to block interviews and all this, and the Falcons just went out and hired Dirk Cutter. And the belief was, the Broncos, looked like they weren't going to let Kubiak go. That ended up not being the case because, surprise, Vic Fangio didn't even want him and let him leave, and he went to Minnesota a few weeks later. And the Falcons just rushed out and hired Dirk Cutter. But according to what Jeff Schultz said in some tweets, is that the Falcons didn't really think that Kubiak wanted to come here, although Schultz said he believes that Kubiak did want to come here. I don't know if he has sources for that or if it's speculation. I think he has sources, but that the Falcons maybe were never even seriously considering anyone other than Dirk Cutter, that they had planned to go after Cutter if he was fired all along, which to me is completely egregious. They brought in a coach who had just been fired for his mismanagement of the Buccaneers. Who had
Absolutely.
and
I've been trashing that hire since it happened. I mean, that's
yes,
all I've been talking about on my other shows. Every time I
yes,
talk about Atlanta is how on earth can you bring Dirk Cutter back to Atlanta? I
yes,
just couldn't figure it out.
and like that's the thing. They didn't even bring him in to run his offense, which was outdated in 2019. But at least he knew how to run it. They brought him in to run the Shanahan West Coast
Oh, no
offense,
wonder why Todd
which he
Gurley is
has
having effectiveness running the football.
right, which he has never run before.
No.
And it was a disaster last year. And
Yeah.
now, he's looking like a little bit more comfortable in it, but his scheme is a dinosaur. He doesn't really do anything creative with his passing concepts, with his route combinations. He doesn't really have a good understanding of how to utilize the run game. This year is looking like his first time where he'll actually have maybe an average or even below average rushing attack in Atlanta. Right now they're 17th in rushing, so it's not awful compared to last year where they were like
true.
29th or 30th. But
Yeah.
you look at this Panthers game. The big thing with Cutter is that he just doesn't have a feel for calling plays anymore. The Panthers game, Gurley was averaging over 8 yards per carry, approaching 9. He got 14 touches.
Yeah.
And Brian Hill also got some touches, and he was effective as well. I think he was averaging 6.5. But there were several drives where the Falcons went pass heavy again, and they should have known going into this game that they were going to struggle to pass the ball against Carolina, because Carolina's actually good against the pass. They're top 10 in all the major statistics for passing defense, which is a shock, obviously, but they're bad against the run. They allow over 5 yards per carry, and that was played out in the game, and we still didn't see, the rushing attack. It just, Cutter has failed to close out games with the run game. The run game was working against Chicago. The Falcons went very pass heavy in the second half. That's part of that blown lead. The run game was working against Dallas. They were very pass heavy in that game, and that made some sense because the pass was really working. But when the defense is arguably the worst in the league, you need to give them a breather and let them not be on the field for 80 plus plays like they were against Dallas. Nothing he does intrigues me. Nothing he does is interesting. It feels like a slog every time the offense is on the field, which is just a true indictment when you have, obviously Julio Jones has been hurt the last few weeks, but you still have Calvin Ridley, you still have Russell Gage, you have Hayden Hurst, you have a stable of good backs, you have Matt Ryan, and you have an offensive line that's actually playing at a decently high level. I mean, they're, above average in allowing sacks. The run game has been fine. So there's no excuse for this offense not being really good. And
well, what about Matt Ryan? Because I was, and look, you're the one that's dialed in there. I'm the outside observer. He has a bad interception late against the Bears. And then ever since that game, the passing game has been completely non-existent.
mm-hmm.
He hasn't looked like the old Matt Ryan yet over the last few games. It came out of the gates looking like, hey, everything's fine the first couple of games, and this is going to be a huge season. They could score a ton of points. And over the last few games, it's like, it seems like there's something wrong with Ryan, but you tell me.
So I think it is a combination of things. Ryan has had a slump here. Historically, Ryan generally starts seasons a little cooler and then warms up over the course of the year. That was the case in 2016 as well, where he started out with about, I think, 3 poor games in a row. He's had 3 poor games this season. It's also important to keep the context of the first 2 games in mind, which was the Falcons played arguably the 2 worst defenses in the NFL. And Cutter's scheme is really good when you can just outplay your opponent. Like, his scheme is very vanilla. So if you can just straight up beat your opponent on his vanilla route combinations with absolutely no assistance from play action or pre-snap motion or rub routes or really anything creative whatsoever, if you can just be better than your opponent, his scheme works fine. And that's what happened against Seattle and Dallas. They put up 39 on Dallas and lost. So, against 2 of the worst defenses in the NFL, everything's fine. But then they had to play Chicago, good pass defense. Then they had to play Green Bay, who has statistically been okay against the pass, On a yards per play measure, they're not that great, but the Falcons got down big, and then Green Bay got to let its pass rushers loose, and that was the end of that. And then Carolina, shockingly, a good pass defense. Ryan struggled. So to me, I do think some of the blame rests on Matt Ryan's shoulders for a slump here. It clearly hasn't been impressive, but at the same time, I do believe this offense is completely hamstrung by Dirk Cutter.
Okay.
Like that Gage interception. I mean, I don't know if you saw, someone did a dot, the moving dots breakdown of that play. And the way the play was drawn up, Russell Gage was the only realistic target. There was absolutely no help from the other routes to clear space. It was basically, okay, Gage, run in there and beat your man over the middle. There was no other place for Ryan to go with the ball. The running back was in to block. It was just a pretty sad play design. And to me, it's like, you're depending on Matt Ryan being perfect to win games, and that's not something you should do with any quarterback. I mean, look at what happened against the Raiders for Patrick Mahomes. They depended on him to be absolutely perfect. He struggled a little bit early, and they got behind. Like you can't depend on your quarterback being perfect every single game to win games, and it's why the Falcons are 0-5. The defense is so bad, Ryan can't afford any mistakes, and Ryan's a top 10 quarterback. I firmly believe that, but top 10 quarterbacks make mistakes. Even the great ones like Patrick Mahomes make mistakes. If you're depending on your guy to be absolutely perfect and throwing for 300 plus and multiple touchdowns every single week to even have a chance to win, you're going to be a bad football team, and that's what we have right now.
Well, we talked about this draft time. Now this is probably, even if Ryan comes back and has a pretty good second half, fact is this is definitely, especially you're going to bring in a new GM, a guy who's going to run his own show. There is no doubt that they're going to use a draft pick on a quarterback. Now, whether it's a first pick, it's a second or a third, that's the new guy is always going to want to do that. And Matt Ryan's at the age where you have to be smart about it. You have to start to bring in someone that you feel is the next guy, because you never know when you're that age. You don't know when it's going to go. It could be this year. Maybe he never gets it back again. We don't know. But if it's not, then it should be a warning sign to the new GM that, Matt could be good for us for the next couple of years. But if anything, this is the perfect time for us to draft his eventual replacement. Let him sit behind Ryan for a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Falcons are actually in a good place with their quarterback situation because Ryan is probably not going anywhere for at least a year, probably two, financially speaking. The dead money is pretty ridiculous this year, 2021, so that's not happening. 2022, it's possible. You do eat a lot still, but it's possible. And then 2023, you save a ton by trading him, so that could be a real possibility in 2023 that would be advantageous. So, best case scenario, Ryan plays well and closes out the season strong. And you can basically show an offensive head coach, which is what they have to hire. If they hire a defensive head coach, there will be a riot. It's past time. This is not a defensive league anymore. We've gone through two defensive head coaches. The defense has always sucked. Just stop fighting what you are. You're an offensive team. You need to just embrace that and stop letting any quality offensive mind that comes in the door get poached a few years later. So that's the first thing. But if you have a quarterback in place that's clearly good enough to win now, that's a bonus. You're also in a position where in 1 to 2 years, you could have a young quarterback in place. That's also good. So if the Falcons bring in someone like Eric Bieniemy and they have a top 5, top 3 pick, Bieniemy might say, I want to draft a quarterback, and that would be fine. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Depending on who they like, it could be Fields or Lance or whoever else is out there. I haven't done too much work on that yet, but
they're still in the Trevor Lawrence sweepstakes.
Well, yeah, I mean, if they're
you don't have a win,
sure. If they're number 1, sure, but I think
I doubt they'll get the first pick. Yeah. They're too talented.
Yeah. They really should be 2 and 3, if not for two historic collapses. So I mean, I think they're going to end up winning 4 or 5 games when it's all said and done.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll be in play for the second or third quarterback option on the board. Yep. And it could open the door for a pick like Trey Lance higher than people expect because they have time to mold him.
Sure.
Eric Bieniemy has experience doing this. He was there for Mahomes as he was learning, and for a year behind Alex Smith or whoever it was they had there. I think it was Smith.
But that's the hot rumor then. That's the more logical head coach that's right there on the radar. Is there any reason to believe that it won't be Bieniemy?
Well, I mean, it probably depends on Bieniemy, if I'm being totally honest. Like if he thinks Houston's a better job, I think there are reasons you might prefer Houston. Like if you
He's got
like
Deshaun
Deshaun
Watson,
Watson,
yeah,
but that's it. It's
yeah,
Deshaun Watson. That's the only
yep.
reason. And it just depends, if does he want the quarterback in place long term, or does he want the opportunity to try to get a young quarterback and go that route? And does he want draft picks? Like if he wants draft picks, come to Atlanta. If you don't care about draft picks, Houston's fine.
That's
But
true.
um,
And what about, first of all, who's running the team right now?
yeah, it's Rich McKay,
Okay.
who's the team president. Um, and I guess Rustin Webster, who they've brought in to kind of be the assistant GM. I mean, basically, it's a skeleton crew that's here to kind of guide the team through the season. But what we heard yesterday in the press conference that Arthur Blank and Rich McKay gave was that they're not planning to have a fire sale. They're not planning to start shipping off every veteran they can or do anything like that. They want the next regime to have full control. They want them to be able to execute their vision, whatever it is. Maybe that does mean trading a lot of players. Maybe that means moving on from Ryan sooner rather than later. Maybe that means moving on from Julio. Who knows?
But that's why it's an attractive offer, because the
Yes,
guy who gets this job knows he's going to have more control in Atlanta than he would in other places that have, a commanding presence at running the show at, especially with that GM moniker.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, and the Falcons have indicated they're open to a non-traditional hiring. So that means they could hire the head coach first. Generally it's GM first, then head coach. So if they decide that Bieniemy is who they want, I think they have the ammunition and the ability with the attractiveness of their
Oh yeah.
situation to basically say, we'll give you full control. You can pick your GM. You can be the head honcho if that's what you want. You can draft a quarterback. You can trade, whatever you want. Just come in here and make this a winning organization. And that gives them a ton of power. It gives them a ton of leverage to get the right hire, which is
Yes.
absolutely key. The right
Yep.
coaching hire is the only thing that matters. And this is coming from someone who loves Matt Ryan personally and as a player, who loves Julio Jones. To get these top candidates, to get the right hire, you have to give your candidate the opportunity to build the team in his image. Because if you're not going to do that, that's how you end up with Adam Gase.
Yep.
Sorry, but that's how you end up with Adam Gase. And forcing someone in. That's why they had to get rid of Dimitroff too. No head coach worth his salt was going to come in here under Dimitroff to be the third head coach that he was over, with Dimitroff probably staring down the barrel of getting fired next season. So they made the right call all the way around there. But it's all about, for the rest of the season, not squandering your draft pick. I mean, definitely don't go 0-16, but win some games and look competent, but don't do anything too stupid with that. Get a quality pick. If you have the opportunity to trade some last contract, final contract year type of guys for some capital, I think you should consider it.
Who are those players that could be traded where Falcons don't have any major penalties? Let's start with Todd Gurley.
Yeah, I'd have to look up his contract. I'll pull it up real quick just to make
Because
sure.
Gurley,
I don't know how much is guaranteed.
I mean, because he was his just a 1-year deal.
It is.
Yeah, so he's got a 1-year deal, and I was thinking, wow. I mean, you got a guy who's got a 1-year deal. He's already at this point, to me, proven to everybody, hey, I still got it. So if you're looking for a running back on a team that has Super Bowl aspirations, I still have it. Why wouldn't Atlanta think of trading him as long as they could under the cap? So how does it look?
Yeah, I mean, the team getting him would have to pick up $3.5 million. So that makes
Very
it a little
reasonable.
less attractive. I mean, it's a little less attractive because it's not cheap, but
That's
the
okay.
Falcons only eat 2, so they do save a bit of money.
Yeah, that'll work.
It just depends on if he keeps playing well, that's a possibility. The big one for me is probably Alex Mack, who a team probably understands is a 1-year rental, but the Falcons save a ton of money with that trade. I think they save like $8 million or something like that.
Okay.
And Mack is obviously still a high quality center. We know there's a lot of teams struggling on the offensive line. If someone wants that veteran center that they think can kind of take them over the top if they have an injury or something before the trade deadline, that's one I think is likely, because Mack may not even play another season. We don't really know. He's been flirting with retirement. So that's obviously one. DeMonte Casey probably would have been an option, but he's obviously hurt. There are some other names to consider. Brian Hill's another running back. He would be cheaper.
Now Jones can't go anywhere.
No, I mean, I seriously doubt it. I don't. I
I
think,
mean, contractually, he can't go anywhere.
yeah, it would be too expensive. And also,
Okay.
they made it clear that they were not going to move anyone that they thought the next regime might want or
Okay.
might want to decide for themselves. So, I'm mostly looking at guys that are like their contracts are expiring
Of
because
course.
the Falcons aren't going to really be able to re-sign anyone. Tack McKinley, if he gets healthy here, he was looking really good to start the season. So maybe someone's interested in that. Other guys like Keanu Neal, that's probably the only other one that I
Is
could
he
think.
on his last? So McKinley,
Yeah.
this is his rookie deal,
Yep. Same with Neal. So
and
they're
he's
both.
been banged up. What is he missed? What two games?
Yeah. They both been pretty banged up. Yeah. And Tack just re-aggravated his groin. So if he can't get healthy, that's not going to happen. But Neal could be an option for someone looking for secondary help. Gurley, Mack, um, Brian Hill. Those are the
But the
top
big
guys.
names definitely would be Gurley, and would be
Yeah. Alex Mack probably is the other
and
one I
Alex
would
Mack,
say.
Gurley and
Yeah.
Mack. Okay,
Mhm.
those would be the two most logical, and it makes sense. Both of them would make sense
Yeah.
because why wouldn't you even want to? If Mac is potentially thinking of retiring, why wouldn't you say, "Hey, Alex, if you want, we'll trade you. We'll make sure that obviously that the trade goes somewhere where they're a playoff contender that for sure they're going to the playoffs, and I'll give you a chance." And if he says yes, then I wouldn't. I guess unless there's some reason why he wouldn't want to leave the area personally, uh, that would be a really smart thing to do. And I would
Mhm.
think that you'd be able to. Now, that the trick is what you get for him. But even if you got a sixth rounder or something like that, it doesn't matter. I mean, you take the money off the books and you add another draft pick, and the same thing with Gurley, because I think you could probably, with Gurley, you might even be able to get, I don't know, maybe you get a fifth rounder for Gurley, fourth rounder. It's
Yeah, I
possible.
mean, I think Mac in particular because he's still playing well. You could get, and I think he's not going to cost his next team a ton. Um, so like, I think with Mac, you probably could get a fourth or a fifth. With Gurley, I mean, running backs are just devalued, so I don't know, but yeah, maybe a fifth depending on if he continues playing well. Those are two pickup opportunities, and then also, the Mac one makes even more sense because if I'm the Falcons, I want to see Matt Hennessy, my third rounder,
Yes.
playing at center and seeing what we have there.
Now, why did
To
they
know.
not want to put him at guard? Why did they go with Carpenter?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, Carpenter's been fine. So maybe that's part of it. And I thought Hennessy has been mostly fine too when he's played. It doesn't make it. They've been rotating at left guard, which why the hell would you ever do that? I don't know. Rotating on the offensive line makes absolutely no sense. Offensive line's all about continuity and building that relationship between the top five guys. So none of that makes any sense to me. But um, I think that moving Mac for something so you can get the cap off the books and then um, letting
Getting
Hennessy take
Hennessy
a
into the
crack at
lineup.
center
Yeah,
so we can see
absolutely.
what we have at center and know if we need to get somebody else there is really important for 2021.
Sure.
Because if he can't cut it at center, we need to know right now.
Absolutely.
Uh,
And he
I have
should. He should
oh
be
yeah,
able to cut it.
I have no concerns.
Yeah.
I really liked him as a draft prospect, but this is the time to get those young guys in,
Right.
see what you can do, and know what you have to show your new coach in terms of where you need to target in the next draft, and what you need to totally rebuild. So
And McGarry, he's back. He was out for what, a week or two?
yeah, his injury looked really scary. He was out. He was out for I believe 2 games. He could have come back for the second one, but they were being cautious because their swing tackle Matt Gono has actually been pretty good. He looks like he can be a starter at right tackle, and honestly, he might be the future at left guard if they, because they're going to have to cut James Carpenter for cap reasons next year. They're going to have to cut everyone they can to get under. So um, I like Matt Gono as the swing tackle, but McGarry has actually been really good this year. He's been a big improvement. Lindstrom has continued playing pretty well. So I think the offensive line is another thing that the Falcons have really ironed out.
Yeah.
Last year it was a disaster with a lot of
Yep.
injuries. This year it looks much more stable. So that's another thing they have to offer a rookie, a young quarterback and an offensive head coach, that there is stability at the offensive line position.
Speaking of rookies, I noticed that Walker, linebacker, was actually snap-wise, he was, I believe, getting more snaps than the number 5 DB, even
Yeah.
though we've seen this defense play more 2 linebackers and 5 DBs. So is that, well, obviously that is the case. Uh, any particular reason why? Because that says good thing about Walker, that they are playing more standard 3 linebackers than 5 DBs.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably depending on the offense's formations. I guess I don't know for sure. Not much of what they do on defense is making much sense to me. But yeah, I mean, Walker has been pretty inspiring for a rookie. So I think they just want to get him on the field and see what they have. Foye Oluokun has been honestly one of the bright spots. He's still not the best in coverage, but he's been tremendous in terms of his run defense. He's part of the reason the Falcons have been so good against the run. The big disappointment in that linebacking core has been Deion Jones, who just doesn't look like himself. He just looks like a shadow of what he once was, and that's a big problem considering he's making $12 million next year. So
the injuries have killed the Falcons in the back seven the last few years, no question.
Yeah. And to me, I think a part of it is that this team is just getting crushed under the weight of Dan Quinn and Thomas Dimitroff. Like, everyone knew they were going to get fired. Everyone knew this season has gone downhill to an extreme. So I do wonder if, having that weight lifted and knowing that, okay, things are different. Like, I expect the team will look a little better, probably win some games, but, they need to show that there's something there, specifically on defense, that there's some pieces to build around. And I think there are enough pieces that it's not a total disaster. I mean, Grady Jarrett's obviously awesome. I think Deion Jones can play better.
How about the rookie Terrell? He's played well?
He had a rough start, and then he was looking better before the COVID diagnosis this week against Carolina. It was a little up and down, as you might expect from a rookie. But the big problem to me is Dante Fowler has been awful. That's $16 million a year right down the drain. So,
one of those players that has a really good year on his contract here, gets the money, and there he goes.
Yeah, I mean, he was hurt. He had an ankle injury for the first several games. He was off the report this week, and he was awful against Carolina. So that's probably part of the reason Dimitroff was fired so quickly, because you don't mess around with that type of money and get a complete bust and expect to stick around. So that's another player that I think, if we get a better coaching staff in here, we could probably salvage because you have to. I don't think Fowler is as bad as he's looked, but it's hard to tell sometimes.
Is he untradeable?
Yeah, I mean,
he's got one of those untradeable contracts, huh?
Yeah, this year definitely, man. 2021 maybe. A lot of his base salary is guaranteed, but if you trade him, you get rid of that. His bonuses aren't that egregious. You can't cut him. If you could make a trade, maybe, but I don't know who's trading for that sort of contract if he doesn't turn it up this year. So,
all right, and Hawkins, he's injured, right? The other rookie 4th rounder.
Yeah, Hawkins has been pretty solid. It looked like he left with a concussion. I think it was against Chicago or whoever was week 4. These games are all bleeding together. They're all so depressing. But yeah, he's been out. He's been solid. So we'll see when he can get back from the concussion. But honestly, I mean, the draft class has been fairly inspiring. Marlon Davidson's still been limited with his injury, so we haven't seen a ton from him yet, the 2nd-round defensive tackle. I think Terrell has shown enough that you're not too concerned. Hawkins has, been okay. Michael Walker, I think, has also shown enough that you're thinking maybe you've got something there. So there are pieces, like the defense isn't a total tear down situation, but there's a lot of work to be done. So,
well, offensively though, there's not a lot of work. Offensively, it's about making sure Matt Ryan still has it. And if you do trade Gurley, then that you got to make sure you bring in or draft and who knows, maybe I tell you right now, if they trade Gurley, and chances are, because if they can't find a way to re-sign him anyway, and if he stays with the team and he's going to look for more money in a long-term deal and it doesn't work out in Atlanta, and it helps that he went to Georgia. That could be a deal there. But if he's gone in any way, shape, or form, and Atlanta does have a top 5 or top 7 pick, which could happen, boy, Travis Etienne would be a nice pickup, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I would love that, man. That would be the perfect. I mean, I could just Bieniemy knows how to use running backs. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They got a lot out of Damian Williams.
Imagine this passing offense with Etienne in the backfield.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, and it's funny because Etienne hasn't even despite his speed, he hasn't really been utilized as much as
he doesn't. He doesn't have wear and tear for a 4-year guy. No.
Yeah. So I think that we've seen that Etienne is going to be a good pass.
Oh, he's going to be fantastic. He's going to be
He's
a
so
stud.
fast. Yeah, I mean that would be amazing. I do think Etienne's going to be more like a back half of the first type of guy, but there's going to be a lot of good running backs to choose from. I mean, Chuba Hubbard, the guy from Alabama, I can't remember his name. He's looked incredible too. There's a lot of good running backs, and that
Etienne's going to be in the top 10.
yeah, I don't know about that. I mean,
Well,
are the
you
Jaguars
heard it
picking in the
here.
top 10?
Etienne's going to be in the top 10. He's especially once he gets out of there on pro day and he gets his time and they see what kind of an athlete he is. I know it's very rare that you get those guys, the Barkleys and the Adrian Petersons and such, but I've seen Etienne, I've seen Barkley and all these guys, and I think he's right in their class.
Yeah.
And I think he's a top 10er. So
I mean, probably. I mean, I think the Jaguars will be picking in the top 10, so that would be right on brand for them. But
well, they need a quarterback though, possibly. So
yeah, I mean,
maybe more than Atlanta.
well, probably,
Yeah.
absolutely more than Atlanta. But yeah, to me, I don't think it's really worked out for teams to take a running back in the top 10. I mean, even arguably Christian McCaffrey didn't really work out.
Yeah. That is tough. You're right about that. Is even Barkley. I mean, as great as a back he is, look what just happened. He goes down, and running backs do tend to get hurt.
They do.
It happens.
Yeah.
So
to me,
I agree with you. He has the talent, and he should be in the top 5 pick. But your point is spot on. But in today's age, should even the best of running back prospects get taken in the top 10?
Right, and it's the difference, but it's not that running backs don't matter entirely. I know that's a common Twitter trope, but it's that the difference between a good running back and a great running back doesn't matter. That's where I'm at. Because look at Mike Davis in Carolina. Case in point, like Absolutely. Mike Davis is a solid, I would say, good running back. He's definitely above average or better. And Christian McCaffrey is the best there is, and the Panthers' run game hasn't.
And
really
they're still winning.
Yeah, it hasn't missed a beat.
No, they've been actually winning without him.
Yes, so that's where I'm at. It's like McCaffrey's great and all that, but is he great enough to demand $15 million a year and make that worth it? No. And is any running back good enough to be worth a top 5 pick when you have such drastic needs for the Falcons' case? That is, no. But it's not to say anything about Travis Etienne if we were talking about pure talent, then yes, more running backs probably would deserve to be taken in the top 10. It's just all about positional value and cap machinations and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean Etienne's going to be very exciting. I just don't think at the end of the day the Falcons are going to be interested in dropping that sort of pick on a running back. If he's there at the top of the second, I mean sprint to the podium.
Yeah, well, that ain't happening.
But it's not going to happen.
No.
Yeah, I mean, they'll probably be looking at
Okay, last question, and that is, and I'm going to give you a doomsday scenario, is let's say the impossible happens and Atlanta starts winning games and they wind up, I don't know, let's see, what do you have? 11 games left. They go 8-3 or 7-4. You know what people are going to be saying? You gotta hire Raheem Morris. He's got to be the guy, and he's a defensive coach. So now again, likely not going to happen, especially with all the issues offensively with Cutter and so forth. But I'm just throwing it out there. Would that be? Do you think there's no way, unless they make the playoffs, historically make the playoffs, there's no way Raheem Morris is the coach next year?
I think it's a very remote possibility, even if he does have a good stretch. I think the Falcons are giving Raheem the opportunity to audition for other teams. I think that's really what this is. And he probably deserves a position somewhere else. But if the defense is a disaster still, he's not going to be getting any calls. Anyway, But yeah, I mean, Cutter's going to hold this team back. But let's say they do win, like they go 11-0 and make the playoffs, and it's historic. Then of course you have the conversation because clearly
he's got to be back.
Changed.
Yeah,
that means that he probably flipped some sort of switch, changed the scheme. The defense started playing great. The offense, maybe they fire Cutter soon, and the offense starts looking amazing under some assistant. I mean, I don't know. It would be a very unlikely scenario. But if he wins 11 straight games, then yeah, you have the conversation, of course. But I don't think
he wins 11 straight games. You open the checkbook. You say, okay, what can we give you for a couple of years?
At that point, this team is probably getting talked about as like a team of destiny, Super Bowl contender type situation.
So, which ain't gonna happen.
No, it won't. I mean, it's fun. That would be very on brand for this team. You know, they've been very streaky of late. But yeah, I mean, I think the most likely scenario is 4 or 5 wins, top 5 pick. And Morris probably, you know, gets this team playing competitive football week in and week out. And I think he's, you know, auditioning for other opportunities. And perhaps if the defense really does improve and he makes some schematic changes, maybe the new head coach, Bieniemy or whoever is, you know, keeps Morris around. He doesn't necessarily have a DC that he loves.
I can see that happening. Yeah.
And he knows Morris has existing relationships and, you know, values that experience and just goes there.
He can even just be an assistant head coach title.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's situations where Morris could stick around. I just don't think it's going to be as a head coach.
All right, Kevin, great job as always. Hopefully the next time we talk to you, there'll be something more positive to talk about. Who knows?
Cutter's firing, perhaps. That would be good. Yeah.
There you go. Or it could, of course, be about who Atlanta is picking for the 2021 draft. Because see, that's the thing. When we have bad seasons like Jets and Falcons fans, the only good thing is our season then comes when the season's over. Because then we have a great draft pick and we start dreaming about free agents and draft picks. And while all the other teams that lost out in the first round of the playoffs, you know, that's it. It's over for them. You know, that we get to get all excited about who we could pick in the draft. So that might be the next time we talk to you. But if not, if we get a chance to talk to you again, hopefully it'll be something even better than
something positive. Yes.
Something positive. Yeah. All right, Kevin, appreciate it. We'll talk to you again, hopefully sometime soon.
All right. Thanks.